So next week we have Tammy's husband coming to teach us all about cryptocurrency and how to invest. And what's the best cryptocurrency?
What's the difference between centralized and decentralized?
Yeah, and all the good stuff of cryptocurrency and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, very excited. The week after that will be Lawrence. And
highly recommend reading Lecture 7.
Lecture 7.
In preparation. It'll blow your mind.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Do you want me to introduce?
Yeah, just a second. And then the week after that, we have Brad Omer. Remind me the title.
Citizenship.
Citizenship. That's right. Okay. We are going to get him in December for, he's in the Herald Trumpet.
Yeah, the Play with the Tabernacle Choir.
Yeah. And he's going to do a talk to us about the Herald Trumpets, and he's going to play his trumpet.
Yeah.
So
it's just a personal interest story.
And he sang in the Tab Choir, too, for 9 years?
9 years.
9 years, so yeah. So he's our choir director in my ward, so he's wonderful. So anyway, okay, and before she introduces you, you're the mayor of Riverton, where my family hails.
Okay.
My family
I knew there's a reason I like it.
started Harriman and Riverton. I'm a Butterfield.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think it was Thomas Butterfield that started Harriman.
That was half of being in high school when I attended.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow,
So,
we did not know this about you.
yeah, so, yeah, my family, all of the Butterfields and the Becksteads and
Is Clay Butterfield? Is he?
there's so many of us. They're prolific family breeders. They have big families. So, I mean, unless it's my immediate my cousins, there's so many I don't know. So, yeah, but we're all related, so. And Thomas Butterfield was friends with Joseph Smith, and he gave him a family blessing because Thomas Butterfield gave him a horse and some money, and we got a family blessing. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. So, anyway, so I'm going to let Tammy introduce you. I'm very excited you're here with us.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, I wanted Colette to do it since she's so good. But I was like, at the Republican caucus, he won by 70%, and Trump endorsed him to be our senator to replace Romney. And I feel like there was election.
We know there was.
Right?
I'm working on that, so
I think they're still working on it. I think they are. What do you think? So we'll hear from Trent today on that.
Yes,
Because
that's part of our.
this is his book. And so I decided to look at how he wrote his
What's here to buy?
his bio on here to be able to, because I know his wife Alicia, and he has 2 kids, and he received his bachelor's degree from the University of Utah and the MBA from Marriott Business School at BYU. And so before he decided, and he can tell you about why he ran. I think, have you been here before? Were you?
Yes.
Yes, you have. That right? And he ran for why he ran for mayor of Riverton. Beyond his public sector, he's demonstrated executive leadership necessary and successfully managed organizations ranging from Fortune 500 companies to small and medium-sized sectors. And he recently served in the board of an energy company he helped take public, securing the company with a listing with NASDAQ in 2022. So he has a passion for politics now and for business and government and identifying better ways to do things. And he's been appointed by President Trump to serve as the regional advocate for the U.S. Small Business Administrator's Office of Advocacy over a 6-state region. So he's part of an elite strike force that identifies and eliminates burdensome regulation across all federal agencies. So I was so excited to hear that because, yeah, you should be here talking so that we can learn about that because we're all about deregulation. And so the chapters in his books, his book is really good, and it's.
How much is the book?
It's $18 on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
All right.
so
Great.
good.
can we buy it from you today, though?
Yes, you can. Yeah, I brought several. Yeah, happy to. You want to make a contribution there? Great. But no, thank you, Tammy, and thank you again for allowing me to be here again. Sisters of Liberty was here during the Senate race, and glad to be back. And to all those online, hello. But I appreciate the introduction. As she indicated, Mayor of Riverton, I'm finishing up my 2nd term. I've got 4 months left. Yeah. I served 4 years on the city council, and then I'm in my 8th year as mayor. And I believe in term limits, so I just thought, you know what, I'm not running again. I think we could have easily won a 3rd term had I elected to do so, but that's the reason why I ran for U.S. Senate. My wife and I made that decision. We believe that, again, we're a citizen-led government. We're to come in, we volunteer, we do our service, and then we move out and step on. And that's why we ran for Senate, to kind of serve a broader constituency. That didn't go the way that we had hoped. We campaigned quite vigorously, and winning 70% of the convention, we'll get into this, but that's one of the chapters in the book, is the restore elections. And in that, I believe truly in the caucus convention system. That is the system our founders envisioned, quite frankly, with respect to primary elections. And there's a reason for that. That type of interaction and engagement with elected officials or those seeking to represent you and I needs to happen. It needs to be that level of interaction, that level of accountability, that level of just informed citizenry engagement. It doesn't happen with a direct primary, sadly. And there's many examples of that. We'll get into that there in a moment. But as my friend Chris Kimball said not too long ago, we had an event at her home, and she said, when God closes a door, he opens a window. And so with that not happening, after the election, my wife and I were engaged in some surrogacy work for the Trump campaign, and it was largely because they knew of our faith, and for some reason, President Trump's popularity and numbers, they were concerned about in some swing states like Nevada and Arizona, where there's a prominent LDS population. So they asked us to go down, and we campaigned, we wrote some opinion pieces, we were on some media, and just gave our experience, right? Because we had actually interacted with President Trump. We'd been to Mar-a-Lago a couple of times, and the fact, what we were left with in terms of our impression is, here's somebody who deeply cares about family, who deeply cares about faith, who deeply believes in the republic and trying to restore the principles of the founding of the country. And so we campaigned hard for President Trump. After the election, I was asked if, by the transition team, whether or not we would entertain some roles. My family quickly told me that no, move to DC was not in the cards at that time. We have a 15-year-old son that just started at Riverton High School, and we've got a 13-year-old daughter that's still in middle school. So we said, it doesn't really work for the family. They came back after the first of the year and said, hey, what about this role? I'd never heard of it before, the SBA's Office of Advocacy. But they said, yeah, you work with small businesses, 500, people that employ 500 or fewer employees, to help them identify and eliminate burdensome regulation. And I said, whoa, that sounds like something right up my alley. And it allowed me to stay in Utah. Usually this district, the headquarters are in Denver, but they said, you're in Utah, stay in Utah. You can have an office out of the federal building on First South and State Street at the Bennett building. And I said, well, what about my mayoral term? You're nonpartisan, you're not seeking re-election, you're not fundraising, so doesn't violate the Hatch Act. You go ahead and finish it. It's part-time, it's paid part-time. So I said, great, I get to stay in Utah. What's that?
When does your term finish?
November.
January 5th, basically the first of, yeah. So I've got 4 months roughly left. And there's a few things that we're trying to finish out with Riverton. We've done a lot there, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. The SBA Office of Advocacy is, I think President Trump has came to the same conclusion, that it is a great sword and a shield for business, for small business in particular. And this is an office that was created back in 1976. So the enabling legislation is called the Regulatory Flexibility Act, or the RFA. And it was intended to give small business a voice across all federal agencies during the rulemaking process. So as new regulations are being promulgated by these bureaucrats, there's a comment period made available to small businesses where they can weigh in and say, well, wait a minute, that's going to be incredibly onerous for us to do, or just provide feedback generally. With President Trump's leadership, what I'm so excited about and why we accepted the role is because I have never seen a president that is so just driving on deregulation. And as evidence of that fact, you look at a couple of executive orders that he signed right away. There's an executive order 14192 and executive order 14219. Those orders, basically, the first one says for any new regulation that an agency comes up with, you've got to eliminate 10.
Wow.
So in his first admin, it was kind of a 2-to-1 ratio. Now it's a 10-to-1 ratio. The second one was the DOGE executive order, focused on deregulation and kind of mentioning our office. So he said, look, I am instructing every agency head in the first 60 days of my administration, he said, to review regulations for those that are unlawful or might be unlawful, and to come back with recommendations on their elimination. And I thought, wow, this is great. I mean, President Trump is very serious. Deregulation is one of the top 3 in terms of his priority set for his administration. And so I knew that we were going to get some cooperation from cabinet level folks and from agency heads. But those 2 things in particular have now prompted almost every agency to issue what they call deregulatory RFIs. So almost every week now, the other week it was Health and Human Services, then it was the Consumer Product Safety Commission, it's been the EPA, now the DOJ just last week came out and said, hey, Office of Advocacy, will you help us gather feedback from small businesses on any state regulations, so not even federal, now they're saying state regulations that adversely impact interstate commerce. And that's incredible.
That's big.
I was in Wyoming last week at an energy symposium. I was able to speak with Senator Barrasso, with Congresswoman Hageman, with Governor Gordon in Wyoming. It was all about critical minerals, mining, energy, AI, and the regulatory framework surrounding that and how we can reduce regulatory hurdles. And the state of Colorado came up repeatedly as one of the top states that imposes more regulation than any others. And what we can do to try to scale that back. So stepping back a little bit, that Office of Advocacy, there are 10 of us. The way the office is structured is there are 10 appointees. So I'm one of those 10. We all have a geographic region. And I'll leave a few of my cards here
What
for
are your
those that...
states? Is Texas part of your state?
No.
Oh, okay.
So my states, the 6th state region is Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and North and South Dakota.
Oh.
So it's a pretty broad region, and my job description is basically to work with governors, with the federal delegation, with economic development directors at the state level, with trade associations, with chambers, with businesses, what we call like opinion leaders in the business community, and state representatives as well. So those state representatives, like we have one here in Utah that's been very, I guess, I hate using the word progressive ever, but in the good sense of the term progressive in attacking regulations, Representative Corey Malloy, he created back in 2021 a regulatory sandbox concept where states can be, or businesses can be exempt from state regulation for up to a 24-month period of time, and it created what's called the Office of Regulatory Relief in the governor's office. And I'm working with them, for example. Montana has an equivalent underneath their Department of Commerce, and the whole goal is to try to tackle onerous regulations at the state level. Obviously, there's a lot of interplay between state regulations and federal regulations, and so we're working on lowering that burden. So there are 10 of us. I have those 6 states, and we have about a team of 30 in DC. We're a small organization. In Washington, D.C., I've got about a half a dozen economists and researchers, and those economists and researchers, in the 1976 Act, Congress mandated that our office also conduct economic research and economic studies for small businesses because they don't have the manpower to be able to do that. So a lot of demographic information. If you go to advocacy.sba.gov, advocacy.sba.gov, you'll see across the top a research tab, and that research has state profiles that we update every year. and it shows the number of small businesses, the percentage, the employees, the number of women-owned businesses, I mean, any kind of demographic you can think of, or data set. And in Utah, 99.4% of all business entity registrations are small businesses, 500 or fewer employees. It represents about 50% of all employees work for a small business. In our region's 8, those 6 states, it's anywhere from 50 to 60% of all employees. So I know it's often overused, but small businesses are the engine, economic engine of our country. It's true. Net, there are more jobs created by small businesses than any other, and it really is a driver of our economy. So those researchers conduct that kind of research. They also, when I'm working with small businesses to identify burdensome regulation, they can help score or gauge the impact of those regulations on that business and across the country if you extrapolate out. So they're a great resource. The balance of the team are attorneys. They're called our interagency affairs team. And we have a matrix that shows all the attorneys, and they've all been assigned a portfolio of every federal agency. So one person works almost exclusively with the EPA, for example. We have an attorney there, Nick Goldstein. He's fantastic. And so, for example, if I go out, and my job really is just to conduct outreach. We do it through just phone calls, in-person meetings, site visits. I've hosted numerous number of roundtables across our region, all 6 states. I've been from Fargo to Billings, Montana, to Utah. We've done about 7 or 8, from Logan down to Cedar City. We're going to have a huge event in St. George, September 26th, where we're going to have, I think, upwards of 500 small businesses participate, with Congresswoman Malloy, and a lot of our federal delegation will be there too. So when I solicit that feedback from them, I work with our interagency team to take those comments and get them over to the respective agencies that are in charge of enforcing those regulations.
So are they telling you what regulations hurt their business? Is that what it's just kind of a brainstorming to find out what you can do to help them, or is that what that is?
That's what that is. So whether it's pending regulations, like new regulations coming out, we want to hear from them right away. But more often than not this year, with President Trump's executive orders and just his overall leadership on deregulation, we're hearing from agencies saying, hey, we want to hear from everybody. What regulations stink? And sometimes I don't even use the word regulation. I say, what are your time wastes and your pain points? Right? To put it in perspective, the National Manufacturers Association, their analysis shows that regulations, what's a guess? Take a guess of how much impact it has on our economy. What's the dollar amount figure you think it impacts our economy?
Dollar amount? Billions?
Billions, 3 trillion
Wow.
In just Utah?
across the country.
Okay, okay.
That's over 12% of our GDP. They claim that the regulatory impact of just federal regulations on business generally is $3 trillion. And just during the Obama years, this is how bad it got.
Oh, yeah.
Or excuse me, the Biden years.
Oh, Obama was bad too.
Obama was bad too, but in Biden, $1.8 trillion over the 4 years in regulatory burden. Over 300 million, get this, over 300 million hours, man and woman hours, just to comply with filling out the forms and doing everything they asked. One of the first things our office did was to work with President Trump in eliminating the Corporate Transparency Act.
Thank you.
How many people know about that one?
Yes. Thank you.
So, believe it or not, sadly, the businesses that complied with the Corporate Transparency Act, the beneficial ownership rule, we estimate they spent around $15 billion in legal fees just having an attorney help them. It was anywhere from $300 to $1,000 just to comply with that stupid, very onerous regulation. By its elimination, over the next few years, we believe it's a $40 billion savings. And so President Trump right away said, we're not enforcing this, my administration, this is a stupid law, we're not going to do it.
Was it an executive order, or did they get it passed through Congress?
It's still law. They passed it through Congress, unfortunately. So we need to ensure that we kill that, but at least right now, President Trump, in his administration, they're not enforcing it at all. So that's one thing that we need to work on for sure,
Yeah,
Congress does,
yeah, we
to
need
make
to
sure
get
that
that off the books.
it's off there permanently. But that gives you an example of some of the stuff that our office does. We've been called, I like the term strike force. That's Kelly Leffler is our SBA administrator, so she's cabinet level. She's at the cabinet meetings. I've had a chance to interact with her several times. She was out here to Utah mid-May, right after I got appointed. I got appointed right in the first week or so of May. And in her day one memo, she said, here are my top 15 priorities that I want to do. And within her top few priorities was to make the Office of Advocacy a, quote, elite strike force, she called it, in terms of kind of seeking and destroying out bad regulation, to get that out of the way so businesses can thrive. So that's the Office of Advocacy, some of the things we've engaged with, kind of how we're structured, how we try to effectuate change, and really lighten that burden off of small businesses. And, you know, President Trump really likes numbers, as you know. He's a numbers guy. He said, look, our goal this year as an agency or an office is to have at least $100 billion, to be able to demonstrate by year end, $100 billion in regulatory impact that's been eliminated off the backs of small business. And we think we can do it. I mean, you think about a $3 trillion burden, federal regulations alone place on small business, we should be able to do that.
And what has kept us from doing a 10% straight across tax?
In terms of an income tax? Or?
What is your opinion federally on income tax?
Oh, on income.
From just doing a straight
A flat
10%
tax?
for everybody?
Just a flat
Flat
tax?
tax, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything with that?
There have been proposals, you know, the fair tax, the flat tax, there have been a number of things come forward. That's something that we talk about. That's maybe a good segue to get into the book. If there aren't any other questions about the office that I've got, that's a great question. I'm actually going to get into that. My chapter 4 talks about restoring ownership. And part of that is we've been so heavily taxed and so heavily regulated, we don't have the same level of freedoms that we have today. So if you can maybe put a pin in that for just a moment, we're going to talk about taxes for sure with respect to the book.
So regulation is supposed to play a role in that, you know, you have your free market, and then there are certain things that the free market's not going to do, and so regulation comes in to kind of hold on to some of those boundaries, maybe water pollution, maybe, you know, red dye 40. So how do you draw the line between a regulation that's like helpful and useful and needed to protect the public versus one that's just onerous for small business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and there is a balance there, right? We don't, at least I don't envision a world where there's absolutely zero guardrails. I like maybe more guardrails that the federal government can establish so that there is a competitiveness to business. Too much of what we've seen recently has been crony capitalism and just awarding and creating regulation as a hurdle so that smaller businesses can't get in there and compete. I mean, I heard that on the campaign trail. They said, Trent, we've heard of too big to fail. What about too small to succeed? As a business, I can't afford the army of accountants and attorneys or the lobbyists, right, to create the Byzantine tax and regulatory code that we have that gives them an unfair advantage. So that's part of it. But we do need to have just some guardrails in place, and I think that's a function of, you know, that definitely the administration with President Trump and his direction in terms of where they've got discretion in the administrative side, where a lot of these regulations are being put in place, not legislatively. That's part of the problem. We talked about the REINS Act that Senator Lee would like to see, where I think more of these regulations need to be passed by Congress and not just given a real wide framework and kicked over to unelected bureaucrats to come in and create something that has the full effect of law that we all have to live underneath, right? That's
tough
part
though,
of
because
it.
the legislators aren't really experts in certain, you know, specific things. And so you see the balance. It's like,
You
okay,
do.
this is the direction we want to go, but then you want to get somebody who understands the science, understands like what is important to regulate. So I see it's a tricky balance.
it can
Well, that's why you
be,
have committees, though,
Yeah.
of people who have some expertise.
Yeah, yesterday's his 7th cabinet meeting, to sit and listen to it. And they,
the
they
3-hour-long meeting.
Yeah, 3 hours
Yeah.
and 17 minutes. And then he said, they actually said that they deregulated 30 to 1. And I was shocked because they were reaching for 10 to 1.
Yeah,
And, but it was interesting to see that they were all talking about working together, all these agencies to be able to help the Americans.
and I will say, I've never seen so much alignment
Yeah.
amongst
yeah.
secretary, agency heads, everybody seemingly is so aligned.
And I've been following Marjorie Taylor Greene for her DOGE she's put in charge of the committee. That's gonna start again in September, and so she's been trying to take those to make these executive orders and things into law, so
Yeah.
that we don't slip backwards.
Well, all they have to do is if a Democrat wins, he goes in and
Yeah.
it deletes
That's part of
every
it.
executive order.
Yeah.
So,
There's this swing, and
Yeah.
that level of inconsistency is not great for business
No.
either, right?
No.
But I mean, there's always a debate there on the level of regulation that might be required. I'm of the opinion it needs to be the very, very least amount
agreed.
possible.
What is how are these people, these advocates and lawyers and everybody, how are they getting paid? And is there a money incentive or an ideology incentive that they're involved in this?
Well, they're compensated just with a salary. I mean, this is a full-time job to be able to do, and so this smaller team of 50 folks or so are all paid salaries. But in terms of the compensation structure, those that are politically appointed are appointed by President Trump, and so there needs to be some alignment there. You serve at the pleasure of the president. I could be gone tomorrow. There's no guarantee that I have a job going forward. So we need to make sure we're representing accurately the views of the White House with respect to small businesses. And so there's more of an ideological or political alignment, if you will, there.
What we're seeing in the world today is people being bought out. I will do this job for you if I'm paid well. And we saw it with the Biden administration, we see it with Black Lives Matter, we see it with George Soros, we see this with all of this kind of thing. What kind of ideology is behind this versus money incentive? That's what I'm looking for.
What kind of
Does that make
ideology?
sense?
Are you talking about the deep state and
No, I'm talking
where the money's
about-
coming from?
I'm talking about Trump and the administration. Because you can buy a lot of people for money, but there has to be ideology behind it to support doing the right thing for the right reason.
Well, and I think it is ideological driven. That's where that alignment comes in, what I was talking about. The reason people are so aligned is because they are ideologically aligned. Take a look at a lot of these folks.
We
America
hope.
first.
That's what the hope is.
Well, that's what the Project 2025, when Robin came and exposed that all of those cabinet members
what I can-
are in that.
All I can say is my interaction with those I've seen alignment. I mean, you're looking at people like Pete Hegseth that was making millions of dollars on Fox News and books, and now he's making $200,000 a year as a Secretary of Defense. I mean, you understand, secretary levels only pay about $200,000, and it goes down from there. So most of these folks that are coming into the cabinet or politically appointed have made substantially more money. I know for myself, opportunities abound to make significantly more money than what I'm making in this role. But I felt like, in talking with my wife, there's an opportunity to make a true impact here that I don't know if we'll see again, right? And so I want to be able to work in that manner. I was invited back just recently after being appointed in June. I was invited to the South Lawn of the White House, all the political appointees. There's about 2,000 of them across the country, guys. Only a few hundred require Senate confirmation, and those are the ones that get a lot of the scrutiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for everybody. So while there in early June, President Trump came out. I could show you some photos. It was great because I was like here to, President Trump. He was on the, in the White House on top of the balcony, just speaking to all of us. And he had he had a stand for McDonald's there on the South Lawn, which was kind of interesting. They had
True Trump.
Blue Bunny ice cream and McDonald's and some of these real interesting vendors there.
That's from Texas.
But I had a chance to speak with Mehmet Oz, to reconnect with Carrie Lake. She was there when she had come out and endorsed me, and we still are friends to this day. And it just overwhelmingly, the sense is, we're not here for money. It's to make a difference, and we know we have a very short window to do it. And that's why Trump is moving at the speed of Trump right now, because we've got 3 years left. We got to get it
Is there a
done.
way to rout out those who are treasonous within these committees?
Oh, they're doing it.
I think so. I think Trump, he learned a lot in his first administration. And
Seeing that.
case in point, our office wasn't even fully appointed or staffed, and Trump won. And he's come to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is a great office that can help us root out a lot and implement what he wants to see with respect to deregulation. So,
Excellent, thank you.
Speaking of unelected bureaucrats, this group particularly has studied a lot about the UN influence in the local communities here in Utah
okay.
and other places. What have you seen with buying off community leaders, city leaders to create the smart cities, get their agenda here and have international ports so that they can do more trafficking in drugs and not have to go through our customs as much?
Are you talking about the inland ports?
Yeah.
Yeah, the inland port and its satellite operations. Look, that's a great question. My 12 years in local municipal government has informed me that we have a lot of problems in this state.
Oh, yeah.
I will just say this. I think one of the things that we ought to be doing as citizens, and this could be initiative-led, is we need to have campaign contribution limits. We don't have any in the state. Did you know that?
No.
There are no term limits in the state, from governor all the way down.
No
There-
term limits?
No term limits.
Wow.
There's no, for any state office.
That's crazy.
There was for county. Salt Lake County imposes a $6,000 maximum contribution. But outside of that, there's zero campaign contribution limit. If somebody wanted to give $1 million to your race to run for governor or any office, even state legislator, they could. It could be a corporation. It could be a foreign corporation. It could be, from outside the state, right? It could be individual or corporate. That's a huge problem. And we see that. I think somebody researched it and showed that 95% of all the donations that are given to state legislators or statewide held office come from corporations. So if you and I as normal citizens are giving 5 cents out of every dollar to their reelection or election campaigns, how much attention do you think they're paying? And it gets back to the question then, who are they beholden to?
Right.
We really need to do some work here in this state along those lines, and our conflict of interest disclosures. People can disclose if they have an outside entity, but I don't see great levels of detail in terms of those outside entities, what they're getting paid and by whom. It's a big problem in the state. When I ran for US Senate, I had to disclose if I had a side LLC or a company, and I had to show anybody who gave me $5,000 or more as a client, right? Because that's what happens. We saw it happen with USAID at the federal level, where this money gets cycled through and given to folks, and it can happen also at the state level. But I think that's a good segue too into the book. So my campaign experience, I heard over and over from folks as I was talking across the state, and also just some national conservatives that endorsed me, and we spoke. But one theme seemingly came up over and over again. It was recurring, and that was, Trent, the levels of freedom that we have today are not the same that were given to us, that were fought for by our founders in the creation of our Constitution in 1787. Would everybody here agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
So where we are today is far afield from what our founders gave us. They bequeathed us. We inherited. That's why I like this phrase, heirs of the revolution. And believe it or not, that phrase, it was said in John F. Kennedy's inaugural address. This is how far the Democrat Party in particular has gone, how far they have turned. Here we have somebody, JFK in 1961, saying that we are the heirs. He said, "Dare not we forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution." And what was the revolutionary idea that our country was founded upon? He said that our rights come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. So a Democrat back then invoking and realizing that we have inalienable rights to life, liberty, and property, or the pursuit of happiness, really the acquisition and control of property, that we have those rights inalienable. They come from our Creator, and that governments are instituted only to protect those rights. That was the revolutionary idea. That's what separated and makes America exceptional. Not that you and I as individuals are any better than anybody else, as being all one, of God's children, but our form of government is exceptional, and that's why it stood the test of time. So those comments kept coming to me, and I thought, I want to be able to capture this experience. I waited till after the election in November, because a big part of this, I felt like we had to have President Trump win. And that's the whole thesis of the book. You'll read on the back here, it says that really because of President Trump's victory, we have, in my view, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to right-set our government, to get us back to that level of freedom that our founders really, what they envisioned, and more importantly, what they gave us, what they fought, bled, and died for. And we have to be able to do this. It's our, and that's the subtitle, Our Civic Duty to Restore Our Republic. It's not that we need...
If anybody wants to look at it.
Yeah,
See?
please, you guys,
My chapters are great.
yeah, take a look at these.
It's really good. I've been reading it.
It's again, it's our civic duty to restore our republic. So it's incumbent upon you and I, we the people, not anybody else. And it's not a revolution. We don't need another revolution. We're the heirs of the revolution. We already have it. We were given it.
Yes.
We need to restore it. So we need a restoration, not another revolution. And what are the six? I basically identified what I find to be 6 pillars of restoration. And I wanted to do this, by the way, in a very easy, consumable format. You'll see this book is only about 170 pages. This could be read in a 3-hour block. I didn't want, you see these books today that could stop a bullet, and I lose interest in those. I wanted something, frankly, that I could read on a plane ride from here to DC, right? This does it. But the 6 pillars that we came up with was restoring citizenship, restoring elections, restoring moral governance, restoring ownership, restoring the family, and restoring defense. I was fortunate enough to get some really good endorsements. You'll see that on the back. I reached out to Kash Patel, our FBI director, who's still a good friend of mine. I was just with him a few weeks ago at his office in D.C., and I asked him when I wrote the book, hey, would you be willing to endorse it? He said, absolutely. In fact, the publisher I used happens to be the same publisher that published his book, Government Gangsters. He came out here and campaigned on my behalf. Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA, I asked him if he would endorse. He said, absolutely. Senator Lee, sure thing, you bet. And then also Carrie Lake, who's a good friend, and she's helped promote. We've been fortunate to have this book hit a #1 new release in Amazon and also on the bestseller list for civics and citizenship. There are multiple categories that it's been assigned to, but definitely under the civics and citizenship category, we've been able to hit that. Now I'll touch on each one of these pillars briefly, and then we can open up for some questions.
Did you know some of your pages are upside down in you?
No.
What?
Go to page 68. 68.
Well, you'll have to let me.
Oh, mine is fine.
Mine is fine.
Mine's upside down.
We got a misprint. I'll have
That's
to hit
okay,
up.
I was turning.
It's worth millions.
There you go.
It's the stamp that's upside down.
Collector's eye. Is yours like
That's
that?
weird. I don't. All mine are fine.
No.
Isn't that weird?
68.
Well, I'll have to know.
Yeah.
Not this one, I hate
Well, it might be.
You should sign that one.
I think it's upside down.
It's just that page, though?
No, there's 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 pages. That's weird.
From 69 to 70.
Blame Amazon.
Got glue wrong, yeah.
Yeah.
So if
Must have
somebody finds that,
been
it's
must have
not-
been a Democrat that put that one together.
They're always upside down.
But let me touch on these briefly, but restoring citizenship, I personally, I believe this is what President Trump means when he says make America great again. We got to make citizenship great again. We got to be able to really instill in the American people, we the people have to understand that we have a duty to be informed, to be engaged as a citizen. And we mentioned several statistics in the book, but during the 1800s, 80% plus of eligible voters were voting. What do we have today? Maybe 60%. In a presidential, even during the COVID year of 2020, they had the record turnout. It was in the mid 60% range that voted in a presidential. In midterm elections, it's less than 50% often.
Drops.
Oh.
My little area is like 17%.
Not too long ago,
Our
we
state
were 30%.
primaries were 26, 27%.
Yeah.
Municipal elections are
Yeah.
even,
And
Worse.
that's where,
Worse than
that's
that.
the biggest impact.
it
Yes.
is
So not midterms, it was my municipal, but we're like,
municipal. Well, even the midterms, for Congress, the congressional midterms in the 2018 or so, I think it was in the 36% range. So, guys, we need to be much more engaged. I mean, voting is one measure of that, but also civic participation generally. When asked the question, have you attended a city council meeting? Have you ever called an elected official? Have you emailed them? Any level of public engagement, only 12% of the public in most recent years said that they'd even participated civically. That's abysmal.
That seems high.
No wonder we have the government that we do today, right?
Nobody came to pick me up.
So we have that measure. We talk about that. That level of apathy needs to be overcome. But that apathy is compounded by ignorance, we say. And recent polling data indicates that you've got a very small percentage of folks, less than half, that could even name all three branches of the federal government.
Yeah, so sad.
And not even a third could name a single branch in the federal government. We have the concept of American exceptionalism that was so readily agreed upon and talked about in society is now actually denigrated in the school system. And we show that over 3/4 of all educators are self-avowed socialists or communists. They don't love this country, and they aren't going to tout American exceptionalism in terms of our form of government and give that kind of appreciation for being a citizen here. We have the issue of dual citizenship that we talk about in this chapter. About 4% of the population today has dual citizenship. This is a concept our founders completely opposed. And it wasn't until the 1960s that a Supreme Court case of F0RCE ended up allowing for dual citizenship. Now, we put in the book this to demonstrate our founders never intended for dual citizenship. You don't have to look any further than the oath of allegiance that is administered to those that go through naturalization ceremonies. The very oath of allegiance has people, and I love attending them. I love it when people come here and pledge allegiance to the flag, right? And the oath of allegiance they give is that they will abjure, they won't abide by any, it says, prince, potentate, power, that they will uniquely pledge allegiance to the United States of America. And for good reason, right? Some of these countries, if you had dual allegiance, you might have military services that could conscript you that are in conflict with America and other things. So that concept, I think, has really devalued citizenship. Illegal immigration, obviously, we talk about that and its impact and effect. So those are things that we need to accomplish. This acts as a roadmap, really, these 6 pillars on what to do to get back that level. Restoring elections, number 2, our chapter 2, we talk about extensively money in politics, the caucus convention system. Thomas Jefferson, the Virginia caucuses, right? That was the way, that engagement. And sadly, in 1970s, the McGovern-Fraser Commission moved parties into a direct primary. And that has been hugely problematic since then. I think what that's demonstrated, now we got no further place to look than our own state of Utah and the election I was involved with. We have 4,000 state delegates elected by their neighborhoods. They were to vet 11 candidates for the United States Senate. 70% of them said, Trent is the guy to represent us. Like Charlie Kirk and others, he's going to stand up against the cabal in Washington, D.C. He'll represent us the best. Yet, this idiotic state law, SB 54,
Does that count my vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
what it did is it created an alternate path to get on the ballot. So our state party constitution, the GOP constitution, says to this day, if anybody gets 60% or more of the delegate vote, they shall be the nominee and go straight to the general.
That's what we
But
should have done.
this state law says, nope, doesn't matter what your private party documents say, you have to follow our rules. If you want that R next to the name on the primary ballot, you have to follow our rules. I think it's completely unconstitutional. So does Mike Lee. Mike Lee and I both have written over the years amicus briefs to fight against the Senate Bill 54. Unfortunately, the U.S. Supreme Court has never taken it up. It went to the district court. They've had opportunities to hear it twice. They've refused to hear it, which I think is a huge problem. They ought to weigh in on this. But we think it clearly violates the First Amendment and freedom of association for a private political party to be able to dictate how they nominate their own candidates. Herein is the problem. You know, there's nothing more Republican and representative than to have people elected from every neighborhood tasked, highly engaged Republicans to vet candidates. And to illustrate that point, when you look at my race, I won with 70% of the vote, even though I had a dark money DC PAC spend over $60,000 in negative ads and mailers and text messages and phone calls to all 4,000. That amount of money can go a long way on 4,000 people. I don't know, how many people here, were anybody here a delegate? Did you get?
Helena's delegate.
I had one person send me a video, Trent, you won't believe what I got in the mail today, right before the convention, all saying, do not vote for Trent Staggs. I was the only one being targeted, right? Now, delegates are informed enough, and there's time for them to call me and say, what is this? Ask questions. I still went. Now, counter that with the direct primary I was forced into in front of 1 million plus registered Republicans in the state of Utah, many of which are not that engaged. A decent percentage, I believe, are Democrats that are filing as Republicans to vote in the election.
Yep.
We think 15+% are probably Democrats registering as Republicans to vote in our primaries. And much less engaged, much less informed. So they're relying on TV ads. And this then ties into the money in politics. I had about $1 million. There were 6 weeks between the convention when I was endorsed by President Trump and won at 70% to the primary ballots being out. 6 weeks. I spent about $1 million. John Curtis spent over $15 million. Got spent at least 15 to 1. He had one PAC alone that spent $3 million in negative ads. So he had one PAC alone outspend me 3 to 1 on just negative ads to my positive messaging. Bought up all the airtime. Most of his money, over $10 million of his money, John Curtis's support, came from out-of-state PACs. One guy alone spent close to $8 million. It's a clean energy, green energy guy. And I say to this day, well, who do you think you're going to be more beholden to?
Or have to be more.
And we see just recently what Senator Curtis was one of the few senators that held up the big, beautiful bill to try to force tax credits, the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits, into that piece of legislation, right? And
So is your next book going to be The Tactics of the Adversary?
could be. But I tell you, that's a big problem. We've got to get back to the caucus convention system. We've got to take the money out of politics. And I quote Barry Goldwater in his book, Conscience of a Conservative, back in the 1960s. Barry Goldwater said that corporations and unions were made for economic benefit and ought to remain as such. He didn't want to see any unions and corporations donate into political campaigns. I agree wholeheartedly. And that's a little bit of a different stance with some Republicans. I don't agree. Get the money out. We shouldn't allow any of that. It makes no sense to me why a living, breathing human being was capped out at $3,300 max contribution when a PAC could donate an unlimited amount of money.
Well, that's the beauty of the caucus.
Yes, it takes that money
Yeah.
and influence out of it.
We have seen so much of what you're talking about in the primaries that we've just been through.
Yeah.
Utah County is completely being infiltrated by dark money. A lot of it is coming through Becky Edwards, the governing group, coming into our municipal races and our
Yeah.
school boards. Almost every town in Utah County, the progressives took top billing in our primaries, with the exception of Vineyard. That they have been so ravaged by the liberals that the people are finally standing up. But it is really frightening, the results of our primaries. And I think we're gonna see even more money coming in for November, because they're trying to flip us blue, and they're doing it through our municipalities.
I don't, yeah, I
And I
don't
don't know what
disagree
to
with
do
that.
about it.
Yeah, it's,
The opponents have formed, their PAC has formed, we're in the same city, Orem, have formed a 501c4, so that they can hide it.
Mhm.
And we're trying to bring it out that, hey, this is dark money, and they're like, oh, you guys are divisive. Like, no, we're just telling the truth.
That's the
People are
Cox
falling for it. The
mentality.
average person is
Yeah.
falling for this.
it's the caucus convention system, it's getting back to taking out this big money in politics, is you've got to be able to, but it goes back to participation as well. When you only have 20%, you're telling me in your municipals, primary elections, that's not good enough. We've got to get people that we know are conservative, to show up and vote. They have good principles, to be able to show up and vote.
I'm
to
sorry,
counter it.
what does a PAC involve? When you say a PAC?
A political action committee, they can solicit donations from corporations, individuals, all kinds of entities to put out messaging, what they call independent expenditures on behalf of a candidate, a political candidate or campaign. And we saw that also PAC money, to your point, just here recently, right, with that better boundaries on redistricting. All that money came from left and far left sources to try to dupe or misrepresent Utahns into allowing a commission to go ahead and draw up our congressional district boundaries instead of our.
That's been something that's recently happened? I
Just
haven't heard
this
about
past
that.
week.
This past week?
Yeah, just the other day, we had a Utah judge say that the congressional districts that we currently have, our 4 districts, are null and void. They need to rip that up and they need to redraw. You haven't heard this?
No.
You know who's behind this?
It's just
The
happening.
big one is MWEG, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, which is a totally progressive group.
So this judge said the legislature has until September 25th of this year to redraw the boundaries for the 2026 midterm congressional elections.
So what can we do?
Both the GOP and the state legislature are suing. It'll go to the Utah Supreme Court, but that's what they're contending, that the legislature and the citizenry are co-equal legislators, governors, and that the people, by passing Prop 4, what was it, 5 years ago, back in 2020, this Proposition 4, that created a commission, and the commission is goofy, guys. I mean, the commission was 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. Why we're giving them equal voice when they don't? It's nonsensical. It speaks to the amount of money that came in from all far left sources to try to infiltrate our state and change the way that we even have our congressional districts here. So that's restoring our elections is key. We talk about paper ballots, election day, not election month, ID,
Yeah.
all that are obviously a big part of that as well.
So if they sue, this judge, these willy-nilly judges that are just coming in and thinking they can change everything, if they file a lawsuit, do they have to comply to that date, or does the lawsuit push it down the road?
I think the lawsuit will place a stay on it. I think what will
Yeah.
happen, some people I've talked to think that this is going to be delayed out to 28, but we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, that just happened this week.
So,
I haven't heard
in
that.
Cleon Skousen's stuff about senators in the Senate race, it was Amendment 17 that made,
17, yeah.
that made, the caucus choose. It should be the legislators. Then they'll be beholden to the legislators, and they could have censored Romney,
100%.
right? Well, they could have censored him anyway, but, I mean, like,
Could have called him home.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, I had people in the campaign ask, what if anything, would you change
Yeah.
in the Constitution? I said 17th Amendment.
17th Amendment, we gotta get rid of
Should have
that.
never been implemented.
Well, and
because-
it'll never get changed because no senator is going to
Get rid of
vote
that.
to have themselves not be voted in. So it's,
It ought to change.
It should.
We gotta figure it out.
to a democracy and not a republic.
yes,
Yes.
exactly.
And now, the last leg of defense is the electoral college, and that's why you have all these far-left groups that are going after hardcore the electoral college, because if representatives are voted democratically, if senators are now voted democratically, and if it's a pure democratic election, just pure popular vote with respect to the president, we're a democracy, we're no
We're
longer a
done,
republic.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's restoring elections. I'll just say, restoring moral governance, chapter 3, John Adams would quote there, that our Constitution was made only for a moral religious people, is unfit to any other. That's true. Sadly, we've seen from the AB scam in the 1970s, who recalls that? It was an FBI sting operation where there was a fake sheik that bribed several elected officials. Almost every single one took the bribe. It was a very well-documented scam. From those days in the 70s up until we see Senator Menendez out of New Jersey that got indicted, having gold bars from Egypt, and we see the revolving door that happens, the trading of stocks amongst elected officials with all the early information they get,
Insider trading.
and how they can outperform Warren Buffett and everybody else. It's sickening. Those are things that we need to change, I argue, to get back to moral governance. We've got to be a moral and religious people with this Constitution, and to self-govern. The fourth chapter is all, we've talked a lot about it already, but property ownership. I quote right at the beginning of the chapter, Ronald Reagan, best political speech ever, A Time for Choosing, 1964. He said in that speech, Ronald Reagan talked about this, he said, what good is it if you or I own the deed or property, or the title or deed to our business or property, if we have no control over the life and death of that business or property?
Yeah.
And he said such machinery exists already, and he went in and gave several examples of how unelected bureaucracies impose fines, take away property from folks without a jury trial, anything. It's scary. And we've seen how the regulatory state, the deep state, has proliferated over the last several decades. And so President Trump thankfully won. We're starting to make headway in that direction. My Office of Advocacy works right on the regulatory state. Taxation, though, is something else. I mean, our revolution was fought over what amounted to roughly a 3% tax, I'm told, on the stamp tax. Today, what are we paying? It's absurd. And the 16th Amendment in 1913 on the income tax, I say in here, you guys realize when that income tax was first instituted, it was, we got to make sure the rich pay their fair share. What amounted to over $120,000 of today's dollars, you paid zero. Everybody was exempt up to about $120,000 worth of today's dollars. And the top marginal rate was 7%. Federal tax rate, 7%, top. You had to make over $15 million in today's money to even hit the top rate. What has happened? We're taxed to death.
Greed.
We are taxed to death. And I say, look, one of the solutions pre-1913, Trump is right. We relied largely on tariffs to fund. We had direct taxation. So each state had to pony up for their share of services like defense that couldn't be paid for through user fees and taxes, like the post office or others. So we've gone far afield there, and that gets back to your question on taxes and flat taxes. Look, you can argue what level, if any, of income tax there should be. I'm of the opinion, frankly, we've got to obliterate the income tax altogether.
Yeah,
I hate
agreed.
it. It's a tax. The government now seems to think they've got unlimited claim on our income. It's ridiculous. Our income needs to be viewed as our property. It was never intended to be that way. So we've got to get back to true property ownership.
So what is your understanding about the tariffs and how they work?
What is my understanding of tariffs?
Huh?
What is my understanding of tariffs?
Tariffs,
Yeah?
the federal tariffs that Trump is imposing.
I think they're
on
great.
the nations.
Yeah, making us money.
They're an imposition, they're charged to those that are exporting from their foreign countries and wanting to ship products into our country. And I think the word that gets lost a lot when they're talking about tariffs is reciprocal. I wish every time President Trump or Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, anybody talks about tariffs in this environment, they continue to just say reciprocal, because we're not in a fair game.
No.
I mean, what we are charging other nations, they have largely not charged us. It's been very disproportionate, and it's not just tariff. There's a lot of non-tariff barriers as well that they put in with quotas and other things that have not made free trade a reality. The admittance of China to the World Trade Organization, huge mistake. NAFTA, huge mistake. We heard Ross Perot talk about it in the early 90s. You're going to hear a large sucking noise. That's what's happened. It's decimated our manufacturing sector, blue-collar jobs that we now need with the advent of AI and everything else. We're needing those jobs.
Back to the taxes,
Yes.
runaway taxes, the other side of that is runaway spending.
True.
Yeah.
And so, maybe you've talked about this and I missed it, but, so how do we ever finally get, especially at the federal level, but under control? How do we balance the budget? How do we get it to where, that's under control?
Have Congress follow their process. The Congressional Budget Act 1974 said that we have 12 appropriations subcommittees. We talked about this during the campaign. Every single one of those is supposed to be passing its own budget. They don't do it. We've been doing continuing resolutions for decades. We've only one time in the last 20 years even had a surplus or not run a budget deficit. And only last time, one time, I think 4 times, I think it's only been 4 times in 50 years since 1974, since that was enacted, that we've even followed that process.
But how can we get Congress to follow their,
Good question.
what kind of policemen there?
Engagement, vote the bums out. I'm sorry, it's all back to us, we
Back
the
to us,
people.
we the people.
We've got to get beyond a 60% participation rate. We talked about this as well. Even in blue states, if we had conservatives, outdoors, outdoors people that vote largely conservative, if they showed up and voted, even Oregon would be red. We just don't do it. So we have to mobilize folks. We've got to get beyond this apathy, be more informed, and actually get out there and vote and hold people's feet to the fire. Just if we got back to pre-COVID spending levels, which is what I know I've had conversations directly with the good senator from Wisconsin, right, that talks about this. And Ron Johnson, he says, just get back to pre-COVID and we wouldn't be having these $3 trillion annual deficits that we've had. It's just, there's no reason to be at the same level of spending today.
That was pre-Biden too.
How likely do you think that it is that Trump will eliminate the IRS in these 4 years that he has?
I don't know.
We're all hopeful.
I'm hopeful too. I
I
would
never
love
heard
it.
him talk about it, so.
Well, and he's talked about the creation of the external revenue service now with all these tariffs.
Yes.
And that 3-hour marathon cabinet meeting, Scott Bessent said, we're on track to bring in over $500 billion, maybe close to $1 trillion in revenues off of tariffs. Can you imagine?
Hallelujah.
That can close the budget gap real quick there, but we have to get on the spending side too. It's out of control, beyond out of control.
Well, and the thing that's frustrating is DOGE finds all these I shouldn't say fraudulent, stupid spending, and a lot of them were passed through Congress. And then the left goes crazy because we're disclosing and showing people where they're putting the money. And I don't know, it seems like we need to get rid of Congress people. Just find good people.
Many
Or
of
the
them-
news
yeah.
first, if we can control the news.
Well, yeah,
Well, in public school, where they're being indoctrinated.
yeah.
So-
A whole new generation.
She's working on that, right? She's,
That's what we've talked about in here. Again, this is
Yeah.
intended to be a roadmap. A lot of what we're saying here is in the book, but I'll just touch on the last 2 chapters quickly. Restoring the family and restoring defense. And we talk about the restoration of the family, the traditional family, how much it's been denigrated, decimated over the years. We talk about divorce rates. We talk about just the single-parent households and even the black community and what an adverse impact that has had. And Burgess Owens, my good friend, he's talked about this repeatedly, where he came from in the South, in Florida. He said, Trent, we didn't have that. We had a very strong commitment to traditional families and marriage and businesses, and that just since the 1960s, I mean, that's fallen
My
far.
Native American friends say the same thing.
Right. And that's by design, right? The left wants you to be more dependent on government and have government be viewed as the parent than the traditional family unit. So it solves a lot
Well,
of
the welfare
problems.
program has destroyed the family because women could get money as long as they weren't married, and then it created let's live together
By design.
by design so that they would not be married, so that they could get paychecks and food stamps. And then when they get all these free entitlements, it really destroys their ability to want to work
Yeah.
or to have a family.
Yeah.
And that was come through
Is he
FDR.
tackling those in any of the subcommittees? Is he tackling?
Yeah,
like
I mean, you
welfare
saw
and
that in the big beautiful bill. They started to
Yeah.
impose work requirements on
Work
welfare,
requirements,
right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the
So,
left went
work
crazy.
requirements, and we talk about those sorts of things and policies that have, I mean, Scott Walker in Wisconsin implemented quite a few things too that were very, very successful, and we can be able to model. So that's important. And then the restoration of defense. We got to get back to defense being defensive. 750 military bases, now we're spending over $1 trillion on defense. Never envisioned that way. George Washington, avoid entangling alliances, all the money we spent. The one statistic that really shocked me, we put in the book, guess how much we've spent on NATO? Just the U.S. has spent on NATO since its inception. $22 trillion.
Wow.
It's 2/3 of our deficit. We have spent, for the better part of 75 years, post-World War II, in defense of Europe. President Trump is now forcing them to pony up, go from the 2% to 5%.
Yeah.
You're paying for it. This isn't going to be on the backs of American taxpayers anymore. It's a huge amount of money. And we have to get rid of that cycle that goes through where elected officials and top cabinet and agency folks go from those positions to defense contractors, et cetera. That's one thing Kash Patel has talked about. And you could get that resolved by imposing some type of 10-year plus minimum where you have to wait that amount of time. There's got to be some time period before you can leave from a governmental post into one of these other sectors. That would largely take care
So
of it.
I'm always confused with defense. What's the difference between UN and NATO? Because the George Washington quote that you just said that you have in your book. So to me, that means we shouldn't have the UN if we're.
Isn't NATO a military alliance?
NATO is, it's just with
military
Western
alliance.
Europe. It was created after World War II to
Okay.
thwart Russia's advance.
So what's the difference with UN then?
UN is
We're not-
policy,
Defense alliance.
governmental policies.
Okay, so that's the difference. So
There's a difference.
should we be even involved in either of those according to our founders?
We shouldn't be at all involved in the UN.
Yeah, the UN
It's-
especially because.
I think they
it's
need to
not-
kick them out of New York.
Yeah, it's $15+ billion that we spend. It's a joke. It subverts often our national sovereignty and our national interests to this body that the governing structure alone is idiotic. I would never be a part of it. I got our city of Riverton out of similar organizations where we're one of a dozen municipalities with the same voting rights as somebody who's a fraction of our size. I mean, that's what Reagan even talked about back in the 60s. He said, there's something inherently wrong with the UN when you can, he said, muster a 2/3 vote on the floor of the General Assembly from countries that represent less than 10% of global population. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
But
And
they
allowing-
don't have their own military, so military is the NATO side. But they think they can police us with the U, so that's the difference?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've
Largely.
always got confused between the two.
But thanks, guys. I know we're coming up close to 11, but I appreciate you give me an opportunity to be here and talk about my new role in the Trump administration and also talk about the book. And again,
It's
intended
a
to
good
be a
book.
pretty short read, so I appreciate it. For those that would like a copy, please grab one. I'm here. Those that already have one or those that want to grab one, I'm happy to sign those as well and really just appreciate your interest. So thank
You do Venmo? Yes, is that a yes?
What's that?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
For being a voice of reason.